For 7 years, I believed I knew my wife, Olivia. 7 years of what I thought was love, trust, and an unbreakable partnership. It turns out, I was living in a completely different reality. Last Friday, Olivia mentioned a surprise party for her coworker, Sarah. She described it as a formal gathering at one of Sarah's friends' houses, strictly work-related. Olivia insisted I stay home, reasoning that I wouldn't know anyone there. Honestly, I didn't give it much thought. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, told me not to wait up, and then walked out the door in a sleek black dress I'd never seen before. She looked stunning, perhaps too stunning for a casual work party, but I dismissed the thought. That same night, my buddy Ethan called. Ethan is the kind of guy who knows everyone and everything in our town. "Hey, Andrew," he said, his voice unusually serious. "I heard Olivia is going to a party tonight." "Yeah, it's for her coworker," I replied, a little confused by his tone. There was a brief pause. "Man, you need to check that out for yourself. Something feels off. I know the guy hosting it, and let's just say it's not the kind of party you're thinking of." My stomach dropped. Ethan wasn't one to stir up drama, and for him to say something like that meant there was definitely more to the story. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my keys and drove to the address Ethan had given me. It was a massive house in an upscale part of town, the kind of place you'd expect to see in a movie. Cars lined the driveway, and I could hear music and laughter spilling out into the night. The moment I stepped inside, my heart began to pound. The room was packed with people dressed as if they were attending a gala. The air was thick with perfume, cologne, and something else I couldn't quite place, perhaps an edge of tension. I scanned the room, desperately searching for Olivia, but she was nowhere in sight. A part of me still hoped Ethan was wrong, that this was just a regular party and I'd find Olivia enjoying a drink with her coworkers, laughing about office gossip. But then I heard her laugh, that unmistakable sound that used to make me fall in love with her all over again. It was coming from the other side of the house. I pushed through the surging crowd, past a group of people who gave me strange looks, and turned the corner into a dimly lit room. In that instant, my entire world shattered. There she was, Olivia, sitting on a plush velvet couch, her legs draped casually over some man's lap. Not just any man. It was Blake, a coworker I'd met once before at an office barbecue, introduced as the new guy on the team. He had one arm around her waist, the other holding a glass of champagne. Olivia was leaning into him, her face glowing with a kind of unrestrained happiness I hadn't seen in years. She froze the second her eyes met mine, her smile vanishing, replaced by a look of sheer terror. Blake followed her gaze, looking up at me, his expression shifting from smug satisfaction to stunned disbelief in an instant. The entire room fell silent. People stopped talking, their eyes darting frantically between me, Olivia, and Blake. I stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. My heart felt like it had been ripped from my chest and stomped on. I wanted to yell, to scream, to demand an explanation, but no words would come. All I could do was stare at her, hoping, praying that this was some kind of terrible misunderstanding. But then she spoke. "Andrew, I can explain," she stammered, her voice shaking. That's when the truth truly hit me. There was no explaining this. She wasn't at a work party. This wasn't some innocent misunderstanding. The woman I had devoted 7 years of my life to had betrayed me in the most public, humiliating way possible, and everyone in that room knew it. The tension in the room was suffocating. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, on her, on him. For a moment, I thought I was going to collapse. My legs felt like jelly. But my anger kept me upright. Olivia, my wife, was still frozen on the couch, her face pale. Blake had shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing this wasn't just some random guy catching his girlfriend in the act. This was her husband. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. "Explain," I said, my voice low but steady. "Go ahead, Olivia. Explain why my wife is draped over some guy like this at a work party. I'm all ears." She stood up abruptly, smoothing out her dress as if that would somehow fix everything. "Andrew, please, it's not what it looks like," she said, her voice trembling. "Not what it looks like," I repeated, my voice rising. "You're sitting here with him." I pointed at Blake, who flinched. "And you're telling me this isn't what it looks like? Then what is it, Olivia? What kind of work requires this?" At that moment, someone in the back of the room snickered. The sound hit me like a slap. I realized how many people were enjoying the spectacle. My humiliation was their entertainment. It made my blood boil. Blake finally spoke, his voice annoyingly calm. Hey man, let's not make a scene. This isn't what you think. I cut him off. Don't you dare hey man me. I snapped, stepping closer to him. You don't get to talk. I don't know who the hell you think you are, but you're nothing to me. He raised his hands defensively, but I wasn't done. You knew she was married, didn't you? Don't play dumb. You knew. And you did this anyway. So don't stand there pretending like you're innocent. Olivia grabbed my arm, her voice frantic. Andrew, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Those words, embarrassing yourself, as if I was the one who had done something wrong, as if I was the problem in this situation. I yanked my arm away from her, the disgust clear on my face. I'm embarrassing myself? I said, my voice dripping with disbelief. No, Olivia, you embarrassed me the second you walked into this house and decided to throw away everything we had for this. I gestured toward Blake, who now looked like he wished he could disappear into the couch cushions. The crowd was silent again, their earlier whispers replaced by a stunned stillness. I could feel the weight of their stares, the judgment, the pity, but I didn't care. My focus was entirely on Olivia. She looked like she was about to cry, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her, not after what I'd just seen. You owe me the truth, I said, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. How long, Olivia? How long has this been going on? She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked down at the floor. That told me everything I needed to know. You can't even say it, can you? I said, shaking my head. Unbelievable. At that moment, Ethan appeared by my side. I hadn't even noticed he was there. He put a hand on my shoulder, a silent gesture of support. You don't need to do this here, man, he said quietly. Let's go. But I wasn't ready to leave, not yet. I turned back to Olivia. You know what hurts the most? I said, my voice breaking. It's not just that you cheated. It's that you lied to me over and over, and you didn't even have the decency to hide it somewhere private. You let this happen in front of a room full of people who are all watching me right now like I'm some kind of fool. She finally looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, she whispered. I laughed bitterly. Oh, so you were planning to tell me when, Olivia? After the divorce papers were already signed? Or maybe after you moved in with him? I pointed at Blake again, who was now standing awkwardly, clearly wanting to be anywhere but here. Ethan tugged at my arm again. Let's go, Andrew. She's not worth it. For a moment, I considered staying, saying more, making her feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But then I realized Ethan was right. Nothing I said or did here would fix what she'd done. She wasn't worth it. None of this was. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the house, Ethan close behind me. As soon as we were outside, the cold night air hit me, and I realized I was shaking, from anger, from betrayal, from everything. Ethan handed me his car keys. You're not driving tonight, he said firmly. I'll take you home. I nodded, too drained to argue. As we drove away, I looked back at the house, at the life I thought I had, and felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for what I'd lost, relief that I finally knew the truth. But one thing was clear, I wasn't done yet. This was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I lay on the couch in my living room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of what I'd seen at that party. The look on Olivia's face, Blake's smugness turning to fear, the whispers of the crowd. It was all burned into my memory. My phone sat on the coffee table, buzzing periodically with messages, but I couldn't bring myself to look at them. I knew who they were from, and I wasn't ready to deal with it. By morning, the numbness had worn off, and the anger kicked in. I didn't even feel tired anymore. I felt charged, like a live wire ready to snap. I walked into the kitchen, made a pot of coffee, and sat at the table, staring at the steam rising from the cup. My mind was racing. What was I supposed to do now? Divorce seemed like the obvious answer, but even thinking about it made my stomach churn. 7 years of my life gone, 7 years of trusting someone who didn't deserve it. My phone buzzed again, and this time I picked it up. There were multiple missed calls and texts from Olivia, all saying the same thing. We need to talk. Please come home. I can explain everything. Explain everything? She couldn't even admit how long it had been going on when I confronted her last night. What was left to explain? That it wasn't just Blake? That this wasn't her first time? I threw the phone down, disgusted with myself for even considering hearing her out. That's when Ethan showed up. He let himself in like he always did, and plopped down across from me at the table. He had a paper bag in one hand and a look of determination on his face. "Bagels," he said, pulling two out of the bag and tossing one to me. "You're going to eat whether you like it or not." I didn't have the energy to argue, so I took the bagel and took a bite. Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching me like he was waiting for me to break down or explode. "You okay?" he finally asked. "No," I said flatly. "I'm not okay." "Good," he said, surprising me. "You shouldn't be. What she did to you is garbage, Andrew. Absolute garbage. But you're going to get through this." I stared at him. Am I? Because right now, it doesn't feel like it. Right now, it feels like my entire life just fell apart. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Listen to me, man. You're stronger than this. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you'll come out of this better, smarter, and tougher. You just need to focus on what matters, getting out of this mess with as much dignity as possible." Dignity? I scoffed. I walked into a room full of strangers last night and found my wife draped over another man like some cheap accessory, the town's joke now. Where's the dignity in that? Ethan didn't flinch. The dignity is in how you handle what comes next. You don't stoop to her level. You don't let her, or that guy, or anyone else define who you are. You take control of the situation and show her what she lost. His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. I couldn't let Olivia's betrayal destroy me. I needed to take back control, to stop letting her dictate how I felt and what I did. That's when I decided to meet her, not because I wanted to hear her excuses, but because I needed answers. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with so I could figure out my next move. I told Ethan as much, and he nodded. "Good. Just don't let her manipulate you. Go in there, get the truth, and get out." I took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and drove to the house we shared. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet, and for a moment, I wondered if she wasn't home. But then I heard her voice coming from the living room. "Andrew," she called, her voice tentative. She sounded scared, and I realized I liked that. She should be scared. I walked into the living room, and there she was, sitting on the couch with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked like she hadn't slept either. For a split second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Talk," I said, crossing my arms. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Andrew, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I laughed bitterly. "Didn't mean for it to happen? So what? Blake just tripped and fell into your lap." She winced, but I didn't care. I wasn't here to spare her feelings. "How long, Olivia?" I demanded. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, and I felt my anger rise. "Don't lie to me," I warned. "I deserve the truth." "At least 6 months," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It started 6 months ago." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal, of making me feel like I was crazy for trusting her. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why would you do this to me?" She started sobbing. "I don't know, Andrew, I don't know. It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, my voice rising again. "That's the best you can come up with?" "It just happened." She looked up at me, her face crumpling. "I was unhappy," she said, her voice shaking. "We were unhappy. You were always working, and I felt alone." I stared at her, my chest tightening. "So, instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix things, you decided to cheat on me with him?" She didn't answer, and that told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she'd been caught. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm. "Andrew, please don't go. We can fix this. I'll do anything." I shook her off, my anger boiling over. "You had your chance, Olivia. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." And with that, I walked out the door, leaving her sobbing on the couch. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Walking out of that house felt like stepping into a void. The air was cool, but it did nothing to calm the fire raging inside me. As I got into my car and drove off, Olivia's sobs still echoed in my mind. A part of me wanted to turn back, to keep asking her questions, to demand answers she probably didn't even have. But the rational part of me, the part that was barely holding it together, knew I wouldn't get anything worthwhile out of her. I pulled into Ethan's driveway without even thinking about it. He opened the door before I could knock, as if he'd been expecting me. Without a word, he handed me a beer and motioned for me to follow him to the back porch. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound being the occasional hum of a car passing by. Finally, Ethan spoke. So how'd it go? I took a long sip of my beer before answering. 6 months, I said, my voice flat. It's been going on for 6 months. While I was working late nights to keep us afloat, she was sneaking around with Blake. Ethan let out a low whistle. 6 months, damn. She said she was unhappy. I continued, staring out at the empty street, that I wasn't around enough. Like that justifies what she did. Ethan shook his head. It doesn't matter what her excuse is. She had options. Therapy, talking to you. Hell, even leaving you if she was that unhappy. But cheating? That's on her, not you. I nodded, but the words didn't quite sink in. All I could think about was how blindsided I'd been. I trusted her. I built a life with her. And now what did I have left? A broken marriage and a shattered sense of self-worth. Have you thought about what you're going to do next? Ethan asked. Divorce, I said immediately. There's no coming back from this. I can't trust her anymore. Good, Ethan said, clapping me on the shoulder. That's the right call. But you've got to be smart about it. Don't let her take you for a ride in court. That hit me like a brick. Olivia and I had never talked about divorce, let alone what would happen to our finances if it came to that. I owned the house outright thanks to an inheritance from my dad, but Olivia had access to all our accounts. If she wanted to, she could drain them before I even had a chance to file. Panic set in. Ethan, I need to lock down my accounts, like, now. He nodded. Do it first thing tomorrow. Call your bank, talk to a lawyer, and make sure she can't touch anything that's yours. And don't tell her what you're doing until it's done. I stayed at Ethan's that night. There was no way I was going back to that house, not yet. I crashed on his couch, my mind racing with plans for the next day. Sleep didn't come easily, but when it did, it was restless. Images of Olivia and Blake haunted me, their laughter ringing in my ears, their betrayal slicing through me like a knife. The next morning, I woke up early and made a list of things I needed to do. First on the list, talk to a lawyer. I didn't know the first thing about divorce proceedings, but I wasn't about to go into this blind. Ethan recommended a guy he knew, and within an hour, I was sitting in a sleek office, explaining my situation to a man named Michael, who looked like he'd seen it all. Michael listened carefully, nodding occasionally as I spoke. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. First things first, he said, you need to protect your assets. If your wife has access to your joint accounts, you need to separate your funds immediately. I can help you with that. I nodded. What about the house? It's in my name. That's good, Michael said. Since you own it outright, it'll be harder for her to claim any part of it, but she could still try. We'll make sure that doesn't happen. He went on to explain the steps I needed to take. Filing for divorce, documenting everything, and preparing for the possibility that Olivia might not go down without a fight. It was overwhelming, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had some control over the situation. After the meeting, I went straight to the bank and opened a new account. I transferred my savings and the majority of the funds from our joint account into it, leaving just enough behind to cover Olivia's immediate expenses. It wasn't petty. I wasn't trying to leave her stranded, but I wasn't about to let her take everything either. By the time I got back to Ethan's, I was mentally and emotionally drained, but I felt lighter, like I was finally taking steps to move forward, even if it was just inch by inch. That evening, Olivia called me again. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally answering. What do you want, Olivia? I asked, my tone weary. I want to talk, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I want to fix this, Andrew. There's nothing to fix, I said coldly. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Please, she begged, can't we at least try counseling? I'll do whatever it takes. I laughed bitterly. Counseling? That's rich coming from you. You didn't care about our marriage when you were sneaking around with Blake. Why should I care about it now? She started crying, but I didn't feel sorry for her, not anymore. I'm filing for divorce, I said firmly.